Let's move over, and Adam, can you introduce yourself to the room here? And we'll turn my microphone off and get the speaker up so we can hear Adam.
Certainly. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Just give me the thumbs up.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So my name is Adam Spence. I'm the founder of the SVX project and manager of special projects here at Social Innovation Generation at Mars in Toronto. And I would like to start off by saying that I completely disagree with everything David said. This is the first in a phase of a hostile takeover of the Hawaii Exchange. So as a potential shareholder, I'm here to talk to you about my pitch of why I think that we should take over your particular project.
Okay.
So, I'm going to get a thumbs up from so David, great. I'm glad you're on board. I'm delighted.
We're invoking Kua, which is the warrior god for Hawaii, but also the god of technology.
I think we were already taken over and done.
And we've been working on this for about 4 years now here in Toronto as an initiative that is going to create a local impact first market that connects social ventures, impact funds, impact investors, and service providers that catalyze debt and equity investment capital for those ventures that have a demonstrable social environmental impact. A few things. One is when we think about social ventures, these are non-profit organizations as well as for-profit companies that are doing good. And when we think about impact investing, we're using the word impact, we think about those investments that have both a financial return as well as a social environmental impact that can be clearly defined. And so the exchange itself is a private platform which has venture listings, fund listings, and service provider listings. On the value side for investors, they share due diligence, collaborate on deals, access high-quality screen investment opportunities, reduces their burden of due diligence. And then for ventures, those local ventures, which are based in Ontario, provides with increased access to capital and increased financial expertise. Now, this project is a collaborative, both of Mars, which is the institution I work with. It's a large-scale global innovation center based here in Toronto, as well as a local exchange, the TMX group, which is the 8th largest exchange group in the world. And the government of Ontario, which is our local provincial government, or state government, and Tories, who is one of the leading legal firms in the city. And it's similar to other markets for good. That's the kind of brand under which we operate. Things like Kiva, Mission Markets, 32 Needs, Impact Investment Exchange Agent, and LANX, as well as Hawaii. And once I get a nifty logo of the folks in Hawaii, we'll certainly put that on there. We're absolutely delighted to be able to work together with them and excited about their progress because it also assists us, as David said, around information sharing. Look at the concept. You can get a sense of the stakeholders that we're engaging as a part of the platform. So we're focused on accredited investors, who are foundations, endowments, pension funds, wealth managers, asset managers, partner with individuals, impact funds, those social ventures, nonprofits, co-ops, social first businesses, service providers. They're all able to create and manage their own individual profiles in order to, on the venture side, secure investment. On the investor side, obviously pursue and identify deals that fit for them. For impact funds, they're looking to both secure investments as well as identify portfolio companies. And then for those service providers or those specialists that can assist both investors and funds and ventures in their work, they're also able to list. I think what's also fundamental about our work is that this is a public service, so we see the SVX as a valuable benefit to both the public as well as the companies, organizations, investors that we're supporting. We're a trusted connector, market consolidator, existing opportunities that exist, and a real access point. We look at the kinds of ventures that we're focused on. They're small, medium, so similar to what you were talking about initially is are very interested in supporting those small, medium-sized ventures that need access to capital and are going to create jobs and opportunities without drawing profits out for their shareholders. And again, it's nonprofits, co-ops, and those businesses. And our focus areas, both social and environmental, so affordable housing, employment services, food security, education, First Nations and New Canadians, New Canadians being immigrants. That's a word that we typically use. And then on the environmental side, renewable energy, so that's solar, wind, biogas, biodiesel, sustainable agriculture. And those two first ones, renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, are a big part of our focus and interest, as there's lots of ventures in and around Ontario that are engaged in that work. Consumer products, water, and transportation. And the kinds of deals that we're engaging in are between 25,000 and 10 million. These are debt and private equity, so it could be anything from a loan to a senior debenture to a community bond. In private equity, we're looking at everything from LPs, which are funds, to co-op shares, to preferred shares, to common shares. And then beyond the platform itself, also activating ventures through investor breakfasts and investor webinars. And we're going to talk a little bit, I believe, in the session about impact. But what's key for us is that these ventures do meet a standard of impact. And that has been defined by a third-party standard, which is the Global Impact Investing Rating System. And that's similar to an ISO certification process. The ventures have to go through and meet that benchmark. And also, we're using and navigating by IRIS, which is the Impact Reporting and Investment Standards. And so these are different kinds of data points that ventures can pick and select from amongst the menu, and then be able to measure and track their impact on an ongoing basis. So GEARS is like Moody's or S&P, but around social, environmental performance or impact. And IRIS is like a taxonomy or dictionary. So we know that impact, your carbon footprint in Hawaii can be compared to your carbon footprint in Toronto as well. The kinds of ventures, just a few examples. Picton Artisan Cheese Company. It is a sustainable dairy based in Picton, Ontario, and they have met the highest level of meat standards, and they run revenues just over $1 million to secure some equity financing in order to expand their business, which is partially a cooperative amongst local goat and sheep farmers in the area. Access Community Capital Fund, which provides, you might be familiar with loan funds in the U.S. in a number of different states, and they provide small amounts of financing for entrepreneurs, anywhere from individuals that are engaged in flower shops and the creation of those kinds of businesses, to folks engaged in fashion, which is the woman in the middle, and folks that are otherwise engaged in other service industries. They get $5,000 loans, so they're looking for financing in order to help capitalize their operations. And so Access Community Capital Fund comes to us, secures the financing from investors, and then they're able to deploy that capital to those folks that need it in order to expand their business enterprises. A final one is we're working on a community bond for the YWCA Elm Center project. It's affordable housing, 300 units, First Nations women in domestic difficulty, and they're looking to access lower cost financing in order to complete the construction and build of the project. Again, all of these examples would meet the standard of having a financial return alongside a very positive social and or environmental benefit. So the value is in what we're doing. We bring together a number of interesting and different elements. One is web and technology by the web platform. It's something that we've developed on our own and looking to be able to share with folks such as David in Hawaii and others. I think the other piece of it as well is identification and due diligence, consolidating that expertise and that work. That from an investor perspective, finding deals is remarkably difficult, and also very costly in terms of doing due diligence. So consolidating those impact investment opportunities is extremely valuable. Also applying those standards that exist through IRIS and GEARS. We have a partnership with them, and applying the relevant expertise around the construction and deployment of these investment opportunities. You know, who that is the Oracle of Omaha himself, having what looks like a chocolate company. Beyond that, we have Tories, Government of Ontario, TMX, folks with relevant expertise that's been applied to the project. Tories experts in securities law, TMX experts in capital markets. Mars has tremendous expertise in providing advisory services and capital market access for ventures. Also engaging with partner networks and new networks developed by our team, including ventures, investors, funds, solution providers. And then finally, making sure we're operating as that trusted connector within regulatory scopes. We're registered with POSC and ultimately providing the lowest cost of capital possible for ventures and investors. So they're able to have the impact that they desire. So what are our objectives over our pilot period, which will be starting remarkably soon? Attracting $2.5 million in new investments, generating that positive impact we desire, consolidating the marketplace that exists, and ultimately want to have 50 investment opportunities listed during the pilot period. And some of the examples, ones I already mentioned, would be a $1 million community bond offering for affordable housing projects, providing safe, comfortable housing for persons living in poverty. We have an equity offering that can exist on a solar power project with community-based solar, clean renewable energy for local residents, and then that community fund that talked about doing a small debt offering, which supports their lending capital operations for small entrepreneurs in marginalized communities in and around the city of Toronto. Although our focus obviously is across the province. So if you're familiar with Ontario, places like Ottawa, Hamilton, London, Kingston, etc. Just a quick look at the website, which is ready to be launched very soon. We're just in the final stages of that. So, the front face of it gives you a sense of the operations and activities on market side, an opportunity to look and see how it works in more detail, latest news, etc. And then ultimately, in the private side of the actual website, there is detailed profiles that investors are able to look at on the particular venture investment opportunities that exist. And so I have a longer presentation, but I wanted to just go through that fairly quickly and then open it up for questions. So thanks.
Okay, do we have some questions in the room here? Mike, I know you've just gone through the process of listing with crowdsource funding, which was a startup, green funder.
Right.
And that's still in the process, in the sort of early stages. But what can you tell us? I mean, tell Adam what your experience has been there. And I don't know if you have any questions for Adam that come out of that experience.
Well, it is ongoing, so I can't speak to how well it's inevitably going to work. But I can say that if you have a good idea, you still need to get it to the right audience. And this platform that I'm using may or may not be the right platform for what we were trying to do. I like the fact that you're working with investors that understand what they're doing. They are accredited investors and they're institutional investors, and yet they're willing to look at these smaller startups. That sounds great. So if anything, I'd like to hear more about who your investors are and how you think the average person through their retirement funds or whatever can support their local economies through your platform. And thanks for your presentation. That was great.
Okay, hold on a
Hold
second.
on one second.
Hold on. We're getting our speakers back up, and we'll go. Take it away.
Go ahead. Okay. Was it ProFounder that you're crowdsourcing capital from? Is that right?
No, it was called Green Funder, which is really new. Only got launched June 15th or May 15th.
Okay. That's very interesting. I mean, the ProFounder is probably one of the better sites that I've seen. I mean, again, totally up to you in terms of what option fits best, but that might be another alternate for you. In terms of our investor focus, it's foundations. So we're looking at both community foundations, so ones that have a particular, I believe there's the Hawaii Community Foundation, correct me if I'm wrong, but so folks like the Toronto Community Foundation or Hamilton Community Foundation or Ottawa Community Foundation that have an interest in pulling capital into their communities, and that they can actually use, as opposed to grants out the door, which is 3% or 4% of the funds that they have. They can actually use that 95 to 96% of that endowment, so that aligns with their particular mission, and so and that would align and fit with both private foundations as well. So both those community and private foundations, and that would be in line with a lot of the work we do in the States around mission-related investing. Our other focus is on fund managers, so those fund managers that have an interest in capitalizing smaller deals, and there are a number of impact investment funds, again, across the U.S., as well as in Canada, that have an interest in these kind of investment opportunities. We're also working through wealth managers and wealth advisors, and building a network through local Canadian financial institutions that have those kinds of network skills and expertise. And here as well at Mars, we have a vast angel and venture capital network that is also being tapped into, that's been engaged in this kind of work for quite some time. And to your third question around looking at retail investors or community-based investing on an individual basis, that's the ideal that we're pushing towards, providing that kind of opportunity where people can actually place capital into local enterprises. Our challenge is with the regulatory hurdles and barriers that exist, and you'd probably note with all the crowdfunding options that are available, that there are significant limits, and typically around the number of people you can promote your investment or your security to, and in some cases the amount of money you can actually place in investments. It'll be interesting to see down the road in the States as well as Canada how that regulatory environment shifts. And I think one of the people there, I was interested in the political impact and policy change that's required. I think that's going to be a big one. And some people have proposed setting a cap on the amount that's invested by retail investors as a first phase, in order to still open up the retail environment on these smaller deals, but to provide it in a relatively controlled environment. And we're pretty anxious. I mean, we would like to see investment occur where individuals like you and I could place capital in these kinds of opportunities.
Hold on a second. We're going to transition over to Nitra. Can we give her a microphone? Do we have or are you going to use Zoom?
Unmute herself.
Okay. Okay, so I guess I go to... Oh, I guess I'm not on the call anymore.
Here you go.
Who's got it over through
Here you go.
Okay, I'll just back here. I'm sorry, Adam. No,
there?
you're
One
right.
second. You got to turn off the
Go ahead.
speakers. It's like a walkie-talkie.
Go ahead.
You want to turn off the speaker? Oh, you
You
have
go,
it.
yeah.
Okay, so you're in Canada, so your regulation is Canadian. So do you happen to know what, now when you say regulation, is that a regulation that's been in there for a long time, or is new regulation changing due to the bank failures, and that we need to make sure that the new regulation doesn't X out small people in its wake?
Well, let's turn the speaker up.
Again, it's a really great question. Was there anything else?
What do you see with
Anything
Anything else?
to that question? Or just, did you, we didn't have our speaker on. Did you answer our question, my question? Okay.
Okay, let's go back to Adam. So speaker's up.
So in Ontario and across Canada, our regulations haven't changed significantly following the economic downturn. Our banks were fairly stable, and changes to both banking regulation and securities regulations. But there has been a significant push around community-based investing, and there's an interest in creating new financial tools and instruments. One of the examples is a community fund, which would be accessible and utilized by small and medium-sized enterprises and nonprofit organizations in order to raise capital that has a positive purpose that is accessible by retail investors. And I think the long-term activity is more crowdfunding platforms of and more folks like the people in Lancaster and Hawaii, yourselves, engage in this work, is going to be collaboratively and collectively going to regulators in order to press for retail access and the right kinds of regulations that are put in place so that you and I can put our money into local enterprises.
Okay. And Netra, you know that we actually are doing in the middle of having we're about to have a study group in the within the Hawaii Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs. That resolution did pass, and so we're going to be looking at these regulatory issues. We should be starting in the middle of next month. We're going to have the Securities Commissioner and the Deputy Commissioner for Financial Institutions, and we're going to, as we're doing this, I'm going to try to probably have a lot of discussion so that it doesn't get hijacked or taken off into a different. There's some interesting dynamics that I'm starting to learn about in the politics of all this stuff. And as you can imagine, that when the banks are definitely you would think that this is an area that they're not interested in because they're not lending to it, but they don't. That they would be welcome to groups that are lending to groups that they're not lending to, so they aren't being harassed. Why aren't you lending to me, right? So, but I think we're going to expect some concerns in that maybe the banks someday may want to get back to lending in those areas and don't want anyone else getting a beach hold while they're in their super conservative mode. So, but but there are a lot of people thinking about this. So it's and we'll be learning. Next week we're going to have Amy Cortese, who's just written a book about all of this, and speaking with us in the same sort of mode. Are there? Adam, do you want to comment on what I was just saying, and then we can. And others can be thinking of other questions, and if not, I can start asking some questions.
Sure. I think I've caught a little bit. I mean, you were talking about the working group that the state legislature is engaged in around the creation of the Hawaii Exchange, right? So, I mean, I think that's a fundamentally necessary step. I mean, it's just going to be one amongst many that are taken, I mean, the SEC, when we look at private marketplaces alone in the U.S., has started to ask questions on folks like Paris Post and Second Market. And so I think it'll be necessary to have a clearly articulated position that is backed by a lot of experience back and a large constituency that is having some pushback and making sure that there are thoughtful positions that are staked out to ensure that people can make those kinds of investments. And so that's why I think our work around the focused local coalition is going to be necessary and important. It's going to support our work here as well.
Okay. So, anyone else?
I'll ask a quick question. Hi, this is Mike.
Mike again.
Sorry, I had to turn down the speaker there. My question is about scale. How big do you think things like these stock exchanges can get? I had big hopes a few years ago when Prosper.com appeared to be a peer-to-peer banking solution that looked like it might have an impact on banking and the ability for people that are paying 20% on their credit card loans to meet up with people that are getting 1% at their banks and cut out the middleman. And I'm hopeful about exchanges like this that are more peer-to-peer, albeit with institutions. I just want to get your opinion on how big you think your solution can go and how it would fit into a greater peer-to-peer sort of exchange world where we could handle our debts and our loan needs in a more fair and equitable way. A lot of people would love to do that, but the institutions right now are not set up that way. So just your thoughts on that. Thanks.
Sure. Those are really good questions as well. So let me address before the scale question, address the peer-to-peer institutions. So in Canada and Ontario, we have a really interesting company called Community Lend. You're probably not familiar with it just because it operates and exists here. But that's proven to be a very successful business model that has engaged in peer-to-peer lending activities and has grown quite substantially over time. They've required to go through a lot of regulatory hurdles to be successful, but they've finally done so, and they've built a very solid business model that's supporting a lot of folks. And happy to email that following. I think the scale question is a really great one, and I would think that there's two areas of focus. I think there. One is the business model and operation of the exchange itself. I think our first, when we think about the SVX, our first strategy is around, it's a nonprofit and it's grant financed because the sustainability model in the short term is not possible merely through fees or other services that are provided because small and medium-sized ventures don't have the amount of money in order to finance such a vehicle. And so we do know at the same time there are a lot of foundations, high net worth individuals, and other charitable funders that are interested in supporting this kind of work. And I think if that kind of activity spreads as a means of financing to sustain it initially, that's going to be a great way to go before it becomes more revenue generating and self-sustainable. I think the other piece of it as well is the amount of outreach that each exchange does in order to build the pipeline of ventures, as well as the number of investors that are in their network. So both numbers and education level, that's going to be a necessary, again, but insufficient condition of activities. And also the regulatory environment, the listings requirements and processes that are put in place that need to be effective enough in order to try to limit the number of explosions or bad deals that occur, because that can also sink the system. And so I think a lot of people are very, very thoughtful about it, and I believe that the scale can grow tremendously. Our belief is that we can hit 10 ventures at least by the end of or by summer of next year that are financed, and 50 ventures listed. And I also believe that within the next 10 years, that given the growth of the venture corporation, the amount of financing that's required for nonprofit organizations, that it can be in the tens of or hundreds of millions of dollars within the next 10 years. So it's a long-winded answer to your question, but I hope it was there.
Okay, I'm going to speak here for a second. You mentioned the benefit corporation. That sort of leads us into the topic of these different kinds of metrics that people are using. Benefit corporations is the B corporation, right? And we just passed, it's called a Sustainable Business Corporation in Hawaii. And there is some, and we'll probably have a talk with the guy who put that through, Michael Kramer, who's with Natural Investing on the Big Islands. So he'll come and talk with us at some point. But let me take this up because I'm getting a delay.
But no feedback.
Yeah.
No
Not feedback,
Okay,
but
good.
a delay.
That's what I need.
Yeah,
Okay.
a lag. So what I wanted to do is for us to start to understand what some of the non-traditional business metrics are. In a normal business, you look at return on investment, you look at sales, you look at growth. Those are probably the main three things that people look at. But when we're dealing with a benefit corporation, what are some of the metrics that people are looking at? And if you're in in the situation of developing a new venture, how do you start organizing so that you can capture the appropriate metrics? Are there some that are more important than others? Are there some that are? Is it in some cases just by being a local business do you qualify and you work on those three measures, but you're doing it in a small community, so therefore you are by definition an impact business?
Are you going to open that to Adam?
Yeah, we're going to get it back to Adam right now.
Sure. That's a lot of questions. That's a chocolate bar with a lot of nougat, caramel, and chocolate. So I think that on your last question, that not every local business would be considered to provide a benefit. If you were, for example, I think of a bad kind of company, a local oil mine, I don't know what mine, but an oil refinery that is micro, that you wouldn't necessarily be providing a benefit to your local community. When we think about the definition of what a benefit corporation is or what a B Corp is, there are a number of different standards. One is that they have a defined and explicit social mission. So they are in the business to do good, and that good can be achieved through their community or through environmental benefit or otherwise. I think the second thing is that it's explicit in terms of what benefit is provided, and that they report on a regular basis how they are achieving impact in their community and otherwise. And B corporations as a standard cover a number of different areas. And so first of all, looks at the accountability of the company, and that's reflected in its governance and how it reports to its stakeholders. And that's really the drive of the benefit corporation agenda is a movement from 18th century, 19th century shareholder capitalism to 21st century stakeholder capitalism. And so beyond the accountability, though, there's the three other areas which are impact on community, impact on environment, and impact on workers. And so you have to be able to achieve success in all those areas. And I'm happy to send along materials and details on some of those questions. And then finally, which is reflective of the mission, it is what is your beneficial business model? So what are you actually doing in order to achieve social and environmental change that you seek? And so some of the metrics within these would be, are you offering a living wage? Are you employing persons from marginalized populations or low-income communities? What are your means of reducing your emissions or carbon footprint as a company? And so that's all put together within a very comprehensive evaluated framework that companies can go through, and all the companies or the folks around the table could do that. And the other thing as well is that I believe that there's a basket of metrics that you can go to which are sector focused, and these are the IRIS metrics or standards. So comparing a wind power company to a pig farm to a fair trade organic coffee provider, all very different things, and so necessary to make sure that you navigate your metrics based on those particular sectors. And then finally, I think it's also important to recognize the story or narrative of the impact. And so that, the old adage is that, not everything that can be counted counts, and not, and everything that counts can't be counted. And so making sure that that is reflected in narrative, I think is also remarkably important. So the story that you tell, I think is key for people. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, that's good. You did mention earlier the iris and then the GIRRS. Like add a couple extra R's in there. Maybe those are. Is that something that you could talk a little bit more about?
Sure. So GIRS, the Global Impact Investing Rating System, is a tool, as I said, which is analogous to the Moody's or S&P rating, and it was developed by the folks at B-Lab, who were responsible for the development of the B Corp, benefit corporation legislation, and other activities. And so it uses the same assessment tool in order to look at the impact of a venture, a for-profit company, and allow you to offer comparison, again, to someone in Hawaii, someone in Toronto, someone in Mumbai, someone in London. And we're using that as a tool and a means to benchmark ventures so that they have to reach a certain standard, and then they're able to list on our exchange. And so it's a really interesting way for us to answer the question of, are companies having a genuine and positive impact? Well, we can use a third-party standard as a means to be able to demonstrate that. And then IRIS, which is again, a taxonomy, which has been developed by the Global Impact Investing Network, and that offers a multitude of points of comparison on different and discrete pieces of data that you can actually take as a company and add to your evaluative and continuous improvement systems, and also report to funders, to investors, that you are achieving this level of impact based on that definition. And again, it is the GAAP standard, but for impact. So just as GAAP, this is what a liability is, this is what an expense is, this is what a collateralized debt obligation is, that IRIS has those kinds of definitions that you can compare.
Does everybody know what GAAP is?
I don't.
Why don't you, Adam? Why don't you explain GAAP again? And I don't know if you have your browser handy, but maybe we can go look at some of these websites.
So GAAP is generally accepted accounting principles, and so it's a standard system by which we can look at people's finances and ensure that they're meeting those certain standards. And accountants can look at a balance sheet in different jurisdictions, so you can offer an effective comparison. So let's take a look at.
And by the way, companies can will typically may have two different sets of books, and that's not meant to be derogatory. They'll have a tax set of books, which is what the IRS requires, and they have their set of definitions. And then GAAP accounting is more focused on accounting for investors, and they can have two very different approaches. So, for example, in recent years, the IRS has allowed people to take what they call bonus depreciation. So if a company invests in a new plant, say they put $500,000 into a plant, the IRS allows them to deduct the whole investment in that first year, and then whereas GAAP accounting would, if the machine was going to last, or the equipment or the plant was going to last 5 years, they would have to divide that 500,000 over 5 years. And so, from an investor point of view, from a GAAP point of view, you would have 100,000 expense, and therefore a much larger profit. But from a tax point of view, you can write all that investment out. So it's interesting to know, are we talking GAAP or in the U.S. IRS? And now we've got the social metrics, which are still pretty new. Am I on target there? I'm giving you some time to look at some of these things.
Absolutely. This is opening up the IRIS taxonomy. I know that this might be remarkably granular and boring, but it's entertaining and exciting for people like me. So you can see these could be tools and systems that you add to your particular business. And so if we were to look at operational impact or product impact, let's see if we can find some for agriculture. If we could fit. So, because I know that there's some of them that deal with agriculture. So we could look and find all the standards and metrics that would be applicable. This one, we know that looking at purchases from smallholder farms, so this might be one that as a sustainable farmer, you actually engage and work with a co-op or smaller farms that are in the Maui or Hawaii area. You can also see what we can look at energy. Sorry, my sorting's not working. If we looked at education, for example, and this is why it's applicable again, both to nonprofits and for-profits, things like school enrollment, female, minorities, rural, urban. We can use that in order to compare across jurisdictions. And again, I'm happy to send this along to folks if they're remarkably interested in it.
And those in the room here should know that we're having some problems with our projector here, but when you get the video link to look at this later on, you'll get the full picture. Okay, and so those of you who are looking through your iPhones can see the full picture. One of the things I wanted to add or ask, we're having some interesting challenges in our agriculture sector here in Hawaii, and all small farms are dealing with this wherever they are, I believe, in that you've got these new, at least US standards for food safety that were just passed, and there was on the national level an exemption made for small local community farms. But what's happening on the state level is we are starting to get some some local regulation, and they're sort of ignoring, probably unintentionally, but because these things are complicated and it's not easy to get on top of everything. So they're ignoring the fact that they made an exemption for small businesses on the national level. So they're coming up with the local standards that are really exclusive, are going to create a real hardship for small farmers. So it'd be interesting to see if IRIS is looking at this, or if someone is looking at this because especially given that the local community investing, one of the main industries that is involved, and we'll see this more clearly in next week when we talk to Amy Cortese, but the food growing your own food is, or a community growing more of its own production is probably the bedrock of this local investing movement. So dealing with those food safety standards is going to be an interesting challenge. Netra, do you want to go ahead?
Oh, I was just gonna say, David, I think you're being way too charitable. I do know the Farm Bureau, and I don't think it's unintentional.
Okay.
I think they want big agribusiness, and they do not want the small farmers. There's a group called the Hawaii Farmers Union who's supporting
Right.
the small farmers, the organic farmers, but they don't have a voice in the legislature, and I do know both the chairs of agriculture, and they are more going to listen to agribusiness. So I do not think it's unintentional.
Okay. Adam, do you have any comments on this?
I think that, one of the opportunities is going to be within IRIS, and one of the things I should have mentioned is that folks can actually contribute to the development of it. And so if there are particular issues or areas which you believe require measurement or change, that you can offer those recommendations in order to actually improve the system. I would agree, just real quickly with your point, and Amy's as well, that both the opportunities as well as the ability for change is going to be achieved most effectively through local agriculture. And we certainly see that here in Ontario. It's about what you eat and how you power your homes where you live. These are, when we look at impact investing, these are the greatest sub-asset classes for people to invest in. And it's remarkably connected to where they live.
Very good. Any other comments here or questions? James.
Mine would go more along the lines of involvement. How would either a local business get involved with something like this, or be a part of, either through education or whatever it might be? I know that sometimes there can be a disconnect in reading this type of graph or this chart, and the actual business owners themselves. So how do you get, where's the education come from, the consulting, and then how can someone like me and what I do become involved?
Right. I can answer a little bit of that, and what I'd like to do is to then hand it over to Adam to see how they're handling this over in Toronto. But there are a couple of us here in the room, Mike and Liam might be. Were you at? You actually weren't able to make the Ag Design Conference last summer, but you were spoken of. Your mentor from the Big Island who does the tea operation was there.
Eva.
Yeah. We actually, Adam, we had a agriculture design conference here on Maui that was focusing on the small farm challenges and opportunities, and that's actually where my initial involvement for all of this with the idea of a local stock exchange came from. We had Michael Schumann, who's a big advocate of all this stuff, talk, and that's where I got the real bug for all of this. But one of the recommendations that came out of the business cluster at that conference, the business focus group, was the creation of an agriculture design corporation, cooperative, something along those lines. And we are making some progress to that end. And I'm actually hoping to talk to Mike about this later on today. But the idea of creating sort of a business development group that focuses just on the small farmer, value-added food producer is sort of where we're heading. Other people that are involved in this are Vince Mina, who you know from the Farmers Union, and Wayne Axelson. We're gradually making progress in figuring out how to do this. And again, like with all these things, it's going to be we're not going to have it all figured out. It's an ongoing learning thing. But I do think the education for looking at these metrics, that's sort of what this is a warm up to, having these kinds of events. And then being able to go in more depth and have more practical presentations as well as more open-ranging discussions. Malka, who just joined us, was at the very first one of these where we did it was more of a mini tutorial on market research and cash flow planning. So that was sort of the other extreme of what we're doing today. And so at some point we would probably do a class on how do you actually go through one of these things, if you were going for financing and prioritizing. And we may actually take a couple companies and maybe take them through the process of figuring out how they would plug into a system like this. But anyway, having said all of that, Adam, how are you handling getting your pipeline going? It's a challenge enough to get people thinking about customers and their expenses and the operations for their business, but adding other dynamics to it is also, it adds another challenge to all of this. Although many people are driven to this by that other sense of wanting to be involved in their community, which is why they left a big corporate world or whatever to begin with.
Again, that's a really great question. So our focus is here at Mars, we provide advisory services to businesses. And so we'll actually provide them with technical assistance and supports in order to grow their particular enterprise to a point where they actually are capital or investment ready. And so we actually would take that and tell people that, we think your business plan and operation is great, but we're going to provide you with some supports in addition to actually get to a point where you can effectively mobilize capital that you would have in investments. I think that the other piece of this as well is we spent a lot of time engaged in market research activities and pounding the pavement and talking with ventures, and also finding out what are their needs, what kind of capital they require, and being able to communicate and translate that to investors as well. And so we did market research on about 250 ventures as a part of our project, and that was really helpful. And we've also subsequently, and will continue to do so, is hold information webinars on things like social impact metrics, or on venture corporations, or on IRA standards, or on how to access financing. And because the education component is fundamentally key, having the right kind of financial experience and expertise in business, and also understanding how you can report and reflect the positive impact that you're having. And so I think arguably we see the ventures that we work with as co-developers of the project. And as well that we also know it takes a bunch of time. It takes a lot of time to guide people through the listings process before they're actually ready for investment. So it's a huge part of it.